Come to Providence Place, owned by the Sisters of Providence for retirees looking for an ideal rental setting to continue their active, independent lifestyles. We offer bright 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, a magnificent chapel with daily mass, restaurant-style dining, wellness and entertainment programs, all with a friendly community spirit on beautiful grounds. Call for a tour, 413-534-9700.
Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel, we'll begin a series of reports exploring the role of deacons in the Catholic Church.
I'm Kathy Harrington at Westfield State University, where students gather at the INTERFAITH Center to pray for the victims of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh.
And in this week's installment of our pilgrimage to Eastern Europe, we'll visit Krakow, Poland. These stories and more are just ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel. Hello and welcome to Reel on this first weekend of November. This year, the Catholic Church in the United States is marking the 50th anniversary of the reinstitution of the permanent diaconate. And just a week ago, diocesan deacons and their wives gathered for their annual appreciation mass and dinner. Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky celebrated the Mass at St. Teresa's Church in South Hadley. In his homily, Bishop Rosansky spoke about the importance of the Word, service, and witness. Proclaiming the Word, celebrating the sacraments, and assisting at the altar are all hallmarks of a deacon's ministry, said the bishop.
The Word and the permanent diaconate, rediscovered and renewed in Vatican II.
Also, he stressed the need for the deacons to be of service to others in the community, providing healing, counsel, food, and shelter, bringing the hope that God's people need. And he urged the deacons to continue to be a witness of Jesus, to work to plant the seeds needed to transform the world. Following the liturgy, the deacons and their wives gathered for a dinner where several deacons were honored for their years of service in the diocese. And as part of the celebration, which I was honored to take part in, they premiered a video on the diaconate produced by Steve Kiltonick, which we will show in segments over the coming weeks. Our first part today focuses on the history of the Springfield diaconate and features a look into the life of a deacon through Joe Gard, who ministers at Christ the King Parish in Ludlow.
It was 1968, a tumultuous year unlike any other in U.S. history. Lyndon Johnson served his last year as president as the Vietnam War raged on with no end in sight. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King was murdered in Memphis. A few months later, Robert Kennedy, who was running to take Johnson's place, was also assassinated. Riots erupted in cities across America, and the Apollo 8 moon mission broadcast photos of the lunar surface back to Earth. Across the seas, there was also dramatic change for the Catholic Church in Rome. Acting on the recommendation of the Second Vatican Council, then Pope Paul VI approved a new rite of conferring sacred orders, which included the diaconate. The diaconate was officially restored as an active, permanent level of holy orders. It could now be conferred on married as well as celibate men. The word deacon is taken from the Greek word diakonia, which means to serve. The diaconate is a ministry deeply rooted in scriptural accounts of the early church. As Christianity grew, deacons were appointed to work alongside the apostles. The Springfield Diaconate program was instituted on January 15, 1983 at St. Michael's Cathedral. Springfield Bishop Joseph McGuire ordained 19 men as the first deacons to administer and serve the spiritual needs of the people throughout the Diocese of Springfield. This pioneering class, the largest class ever, celebrates its 35th anniversary this year. A second class graduated in 1984, but the diaconate program went on a 7-year hiatus before reemerging in 1991. According to the director of the Springfield Diaconate, Leo Coughlin, there are currently 78 active permanent deacons in the diocese. 20 are retired. 3 deacons belong to the Maronite Church. In 13 ordinations since its founding, 130 men have been ordained, or approximately 10 deacons per ordination. Currently, 13 men are in formation. 6 are scheduled to be ordained in 2019 and 7 in 2021. Over the past half-century, the number of permanent deacons in the U.S. Catholic Church has steadily grown to more than 18,000 in 2017. Deacons may serve in a variety of ways, but charitable service is the main area of a deacon's ministry. Some assist priests at the Mass by preaching the gospel or by presiding over weddings, confirmations, baptisms, wakes, and burials. Others find their calling in jails and hospitals, visiting the aged and poor, teaching religious education classes, and ministering to the youth or on college campuses. During formation, all deacons go through a rigorous 4-year program of study at Our Lady of the Elms College, studying theology, canon law, and the history of Christianity, to name a few. This class includes the next group of deacons who will be ordained next year. Each class begins with the reading of Scripture and the singing of hymns.
We are here to help each other walk the mile and bear the load.
Sister Chris Clark leads the discussion.
So what if the door is opened up to China? Well,
these men are given the spiritual tools early on to make an immediate impact on their parishes once they are ordained. Joe Gard, seen here at a Chalice of Salvation Mass, was ordained in 1991. Gard's first Mass was at St. Catherine of Siena in Springfield, where he is also a parishioner. Deacon Gard, who grew up in Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Springfield, performs many of his deacon ministries at his assigned parish, Christ the King in Ludlow. After serving aboard a Navy destroyer in the Korean War, Joe got married, started working as an engineer with a phone company, and raised 2 children. Before he was ordained, his program director told Gard and others in his class what a deacon could expect, saying,
I want to tell you guys right now, it's not about prancing around in a sanctuary in fancy colors. 10% only you'll be working in a sanctuary. The other 90%, you'll be in the trenches.
Most diaconate men must find a balance in juggling many of life's obligations.
But Bishop McGuire made one thing very clear. Number 1 is your family, number 2 is your job, and number 3 is the diaconate. And that's been difficult for many guys, including myself, to keep that in priority.
Joe's wife, Barbara, has been by Joe's side every step of the way. She wasn't surprised when he announced he wanted to become a deacon.
It was something really I expected. You know, it had been there for quite a while, and he helped out so much in the parish and was so devoted to the church that it didn't come as a shock to me. And I was very supportive of it.
During his 27 years as deacon, Gard has been involved in various ministries. For 10 years, he participated in the Residents Encounter Christ program at the Hampshire County House of Correction. Gard also served as the assistant director of the diaconate program for a decade.
We preach quite a bit, depending what parish you're in. And we never know about the seeds we're planting. Once we plant the seeds, then God waters them and fertilizes them.
Now semi-retired, Gard gets calls on a regular basis to cover wakes and burials when priests can't make it. His newfound ministry focuses on people
who can't come to church, won't come to church, or don't come to church. Of course, that's evangelization.
Joe frequently visits nursing homes and hospitals. On this busy fall Friday, he stops by for his weekly trip to the Mercy Life Center in Holyoke. Here, he administers communion to the group, most of whom are outpatients. Joe also leads the women in prayer by reciting the rosary.
Beginning with the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven.
After Mercy, Joe drives back to Springfield to visit Joan, a homebound parishioner.
Okay, we're just going to say the usual prayers we do for communion.
For Gard, it's all in a day's work, answering Christ's call.
He's such a role model to all of the members of the family. And the other thing, in times of sorrow, we've had a daughter who died, we've had mothers and fathers who've passed away, and sisters, and he's just been so supportive and able to be up there on the altar doing the homily. and tying all of us spiritually together.
We all have good days and bad days. As long as we have more good ones than bad ones, that's the best part. Okay?
Gard counts his blessings and says he has no plans to slow down.
I think a rather famous man that used to spend a lot of time behind a plate as a catcher once said, "It ain't over till it's over." Yes, and I think that's Joe Gard.
Yogi.
Yogi Berra.
Join us again next week on Reel to Reel as we continue our coverage of the 50th anniversary of the United States Diaconate. We'll profile two other permanent deacons, Bob Farrell and Aldeberto Santiago Martinez. Hope you join us.
And you can also read more on the diaconate in the current issue of the Catholic Mirror. If you don't receive the Mirror, you can get it free by calling 413-732-3175. That's 413-732-3175. And we have more coming up on Reel to Reel. We'll see how interfaith leaders came together in prayer and solemn reflection to mark the tragic synagogue shootings in Pittsburgh just a week ago. And we'll continue our series on pilgrimage to Eastern Europe. These stories and more are still to come on Reel to Reel.
The Chalice of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passionist Brother Terrence Gale and your Chalice host, inviting you to take time out of your busy days and join us this Sunday morning. We welcome Monsignor David Joyce and begin our annual Novena of Remembrance from the Gate of Heaven Cemetery. The Chalice of Salvation, your spiritual connection, Sunday morning at 10 on WWLP TV 22, and coming up next on Fox 23 WXXA.
Oscar winner Damien Chazelle gives us a grand new film, and The Hate U Give is powerful and must be seen. Let's take a look at this week's Real Culture. With the help of Neil Armstrong's family, First Man was born. This is a great film, but one that is just a wee bit too long. Ryan Gosling plays Armstrong with soul and power. And what I loved is they show him as a regular man, living with everyday ups and downs. Claire Foy plays his wife, and she also shows us what a powerful actor she is. Her scenes with Ryan Gosling are right on the money. Director and Oscar winner Damien Chazelle wanted to make this film look like a documentary, and at times it really does. From the first scene on, you're in for the ride you'll never forget. It's rated PG-13.
Slow your rate. Do you read? Neil.
Powerful, gripping, and wonderful. Those are the terms to describe the new film, The Hate U Give, a story that must be told. The film is about youth, our youth, and what they must go through in daily life. The film is really like watching the news and how we must deal and process all the police shootings, police brutality, and all that pain that comes with it. The film is rated R for salty language, mature themes, and tough images.
Why else you think so many people in our neighborhood deal?
They need the money.
Yeah. And ain't no real jobs around here. So they fall into the trap.
And you can see my reviews, as well as read other movie reviews, provided by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops online at iobserve.org. That's iobserve.org. On the next Real Culture, we'll be talking about the new play, The War and Walt Whipple, starting at the Majestic Theater on November 3rd. Director and producer Danny Eaton's life story about his family and World War II. I'm Mark Giza for Real Culture. Have a fabulous weekend.
I'm Kathy Harrington at Westfield State University, where students of all faiths gather at the INTERFAITH Center this week to pray for the victims of the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh and to pray for unity and respect. While the nation and the world mourn the deaths of 11 people in the massacre of worshipers during Shabbat, student religious leaders on the campus of Westfield State University found a way to respond.
If our Jewish brothers are injured or hurt, it affects all of us.
Father Savage is the Catholic chaplain on the WSU campus. He hoped that through unified prayers, some good would come out of this evil.
And we know that their families at Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh are still in deep pain, but the assuring peace comes knowing that the whole world is gathered to pray.
The first person we light for is Joyce Feinberg. She was 75 years old.
11 candles for the shooting victims and a table of candles for other loved ones being remembered. As the service continued, the room filled to capacity.
But the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them.
Father Savage offered the first reading from Hebrew Scripture. Then Rabbi Ephraim Eisen chanted the Psalm of David, "The Lord is my shepherd," a passage shared by Jews and Christians in mourning. Stuart Bromberg of the Jewish Federation of Western Massachusetts just returned from meetings in Israel, where he says his eyes have been widened by reports of the spread of anti-Semitism, hate, and bigotry throughout the world.
We cannot remain passive when these events of hatred and violence permeate our society. No matter where we are, regardless of affiliation, we share an obligation to one another and to the world. That's what makes us stronger.
The Vice President of Student Affairs invited all to sign a peace banner featuring the Tree of Life as proof that all faiths are standing together in the call for unity, respect, and peace.
The Muslim Student Organization Club, the Newman Club, and the Jewish Student Organization Club, we all came and we were inclusive of everyone, so I think it was important to get our voice out there.
In light of all this, I remain hopeful that we can change the future. We can change this path of intolerance we have gone down for so many years. And seeing you all gather here tonight, I know we can move towards the path of love and acceptance.
The Tree of Life banner, designed by the Jewish Student Organization, will be displayed around the campus so students can post their messages to the mourning community in Pittsburgh. In Westfield, I'm Kathy Harrington.
In recent years, Catholic Communications has paired with John Paul Tours to offer local faithful a chance to visit sacred sites throughout the world. This past July was no exception as pilgrims from our diocese were treated to many beautiful sites in Eastern Europe. Part 2 of our pilgrimage series today finds the pilgrims enjoying the sights and sounds of Krakow, Poland, including Wawel Castle and places that mark the early history of St. John Paul II.
With our jet lag behind us, we arrive in the beautiful city of Krakow, one of the oldest cities in Poland. This beautiful and magnificent city of Krakow is located on the banks of the Vistula River. This city dates back to the 7th century and was the capital of Poland from the 11th century until the 16th century. Here, the kings of Poland resided. They reigned over this country and made this city royal. And it still is royal today with its beauty that surrounds it. In the year 2000, the European Union dubbed Krakow the cultural capital of Poland. Indeed it is. We're standing here on the famous Franciszka Street number 3, which is the apostolic palace for the Archbishop of Krakow. In this palace is where John Paul II, then Cardinal Wojtyła, lived as the Archbishop of Krakow. But also it is historic because this is where young Karol Wojtyła studied for the seminary in this residence. This chapel was recently renovated under Archbishop Cardinal Dziwisz. The only thing that was not renovated in this chapel was the floor. Why? Because it was there that Karol Wojtyła prostrated himself and was ordained a priest on November 1st, 1946. We're walking through the park here at Krakow, and recalling how many times Karol Wojtyła, Father Karol Wojtyła and Bishop Karol Wojtyła would have walked down this very sidewalk as he came to teach here at the seminary in Krakow, where he taught philosophy and many other subjects. And so here is the seminary for the Archdiocese of Krakow. Behind me is the Wawel Cathedral. It is the cathedral of the Archbishop of Krakow, and in this cathedral are buried the kings of Poland, the President of Poland, and Saint Stanislaus, Bishop and Martyr, who is the patron saint of Poland. The Wawel Cathedral Basilica is more than 900 years old. Walking into the cathedral, we are greeted by an altar with a great canopy. Here, the body of Saint Stanislaus is entombed in a silver sarcophagus. He was the Bishop of Krakow from 1030 to 1079 and martyred by King Bolesław II. The crypt beneath the cathedral holds the tombs of Polish kings, national heroes, generals, and revolutionaries. It's here at this altar that Father Karol Wojtyła celebrated his first Mass on November 2nd, 1946. The Wawel Castle, now a museum, was residence to Polish monarchs during the 16th and 17th centuries. Continuing our tour, we walk down the Wawel Hill through the streets of Krakow. Here, we experience the beauty of the city center known as the Rynek, a grand square full of shops and cafes. But our real focus here is the breathtaking basilica, which holds a prominent place in the square, the Kościół Mariacki, or St. Mary's. After the Tartar raids of the 13th century left the original church in ruins, St. Mary's was rebuilt in Gothic style on the existing foundations and was consecrated in 1320. In the early 15th century, the towers took the iconic form they have today, when the northern tower was raised to over 260 feet and became a watchtower for the city. It is from here that the Hejnał Mariacki, the city's famous bugle call, is played every hour on the hour. The tune ironically breaks off mid-melody in honor of the trumpeter who was shot in the neck with an arrow while belatedly warning the city of Mongol invaders. Inside, the altarpiece, the stained glass windows of the nave, and the blue starred ceiling take our breath away. The magnificent wooden altarpiece was the principal work of 15th century German artist WESTFIELD. It took 12 painstaking years to complete and depicts the Virgin Mary among the apostles. In the middle of the square is Cloth Hall, once a major center of international trade. Traveling merchants would meet here to discuss business and to barter. During its golden age in the 15th century, the hall was the source of exotic imports from the East, spices, silk, leather, and wax. Now the hall is filled with vendors selling goods to tourists. Welcome to Wieliczka. This is a town known for its famous salt mines. Opened in the 13th century, this mine produced table salt continuously until 2007 as one of the world's oldest salt mines in operation. It is one of the most famous attractions in Poland. The mine is over 10 football fields deep and is 178 miles long. And you will never forget the trip down.
We are told there's 100 steps to the salt mine, and I think after about 1,700 steps down, we finally got there.
Right.
But again, incredible when you think about how these beautiful figures and carvings, and even the chapels were really, made by these folks out of the salt, out of the rock. It's mind-boggling to see it, but just a beautiful experience.
The sanctuary of St. John Paul II is situated in the Łagiewnicki neighborhood of Krakow, some 2 miles south of Old Town. The principal part of the shrine is an octagonal basement known as the Lower Church, or the Church of the Relics. Although windowless, it looks cheerful thanks to bright lighting and pale decor. Vividly colored pictures depict events from the pontificate of Pope John Paul II, namely his visits to the world's most famous Marian sanctuaries. The centerpiece of the shrine is a simple marble altar. It contains a vial with the relic of blood from St. John Paul II displayed in a glass case. I hope you enjoyed our tour, and don't forget to join us next week for part 2 of our stop in Krakow. We'll visit the Shrine of the Divine Mercy and learn of the interesting link it has to our Springfield diocese, as well as a somber tour through the death camps of Auschwitz and Birkenau.
And we look forward to next week's installment on our pilgrimage to Eastern Europe. Closer to home, the works of New York City artist Robin Joyce Miller have returned to Elms College this month in the mixed media exhibit Langston and Me, featuring collages dedicated to the late poet Langston Hughes. Miller, a visual artist, poet, and author, specializes in African American heritage themes. The latest, on display in the Borgia Gallery, direct illustrations of Langston Hughes poetry. Hughes, best known as a leader of the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. Miller says she hopes viewers of the exhibit will see the elegance, strength, inner beauty, and faith of a people she says have been devalued throughout history, yet have continued with dignity and grace.
In our church, in the Black church, the minister used Langston Hughes in sermons, and so I clearly loved the Langston Hughes story. And in fact, I listened to his poetry, read it, and listened to other people recite his poetry, and decided that I wanted to illustrate it. And because it was so much about the Black experience, Black life, and I could show that in the art.
One can feel the words of Hughes' poetry come alive in the pieces as Miller's husband, James, recites one of Hughes' poems, My People.
The night is beautiful. So, the faces of my people. The stars are beautiful. So, the eyes of my people. Beautiful also is the sun. Beautiful also are the souls of my people.
Miller uses a unique style of mixed media, decorative paper, oil, pastels, and fabric paint to express her great pride for her cultural heritage and deep appreciation of African American life. And Langston and Me will be on display in the Borgia Gallery at Elms College in Chicopee daily from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. through November 8th. The exhibit is free and open to the public. And for this week, that's Reel to Reel. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. And remember, for more updates anytime, you can find information and news on the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and around the world on our news and information site, iobserve.org. We also are on Facebook, updating daily while our reporters work on stories for Reel to Reel. Check us out and friend us at Catholic Communications. And join me right back here next week for another edition of Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. See you then.
Reel to Reel is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.